Welcome to our Saturday Simulcast, August 10th edition, one day after Tom Dienhart's birthday, but who's counting? And hope Tom's a working man on his birthday as he's covering practice, etc. We want to thank the Union Club Hotel. I thought for Tom's birthday, I'd get him a gift certificate at the spa up there. He'd get his nails done. Little massage, getting those nails done is pretty hip with the guys these days. I haven't gotten that far yet, Tom. I'm not sure you will, but I don't know. I don't want to say that, but we appreciate the Union Club Hotel and all they do for us, and it is a very nice place to frequent, and very much from the Boiler Up Bar, 811 Bistro. Leaps Coffee. I enjoy a cup of coffee in the morning now and then, so that's a good thing as well. All right, Tom. This will air Saturday, so we'll talk in those terms. The Boilermakers will be having a scrimmage. Ryan Walters and company. 10 days into, am I counting right? No, about 10 days into practice, I guess, if you look at it. But we're not going to have access to it. They're not going to talk after it as well, correct? But
Correct.
I guess give me an overview of what your feeling is through these first few days of practice, and what you sense. You're a studier of human nature. What are you hearing from the Boilermakers early on?
Well, first, if you're looking to buy a gift for the Chicago Bears' new quarterback, Caleb Williams, he probably would like a pedicure.
Yeah.
From the Union Club, but I digress. The first practice was July 31st, Alan, August 10th. 8th practice was on Friday. We've got a chance to at least have access to 7 of those practices. And you're right, Saturday here, August 10th, is the first scrimmage of training camp. I've been told there will be live tackling. So there you go. I'm not sure. I wasn't provided with any other details as to what was on their to-do list, so to speak. I'm trying to effort those as we speak or as we talk here, Alan, to get an idea maybe how many plays they've got scripted, what they want to work on. Is it going to be ones versus ones? Just things of that nature, format in general, just to get some general idea of what's going to go on here. But yeah, you always hope for good health, right? You don't want to lose anybody, and we'll see if anybody emerges, Alan. So, that's the biggest thing. Again, coaches always harp on is keeping everybody healthy. And Alan, I remember way back in 2022, I think it was back-to-back practices in camp, or maybe in the same practice, Alan. Purdue lost 2 players to season-ending injuries. They lost Garrett Miller, they lost DeMarge Lewis. And of course, last year they lost Jamal Edron, the wide receiver, in August for the season, and they almost lost Josh Kaltenberger, their center. So far so good from what people are saying, Alan, that they haven't had anybody suffer that type of a severe injury thus far. They've had there plenty of nicks and bruises that have kept guys out of practices. I've chronicled the key guys who've been missing practices here and there. And I guess what's noteworthy, Alan, there's only been 3 guys who haven't practiced at all. One of those is a big offensive lineman, a junior college kid named Rod Green. I'm kind of hearing he may be out for the year. We also have not seen one of the defensive linemen, Joe Anderson, at all in training camp. And I think he was projected to be a starter.
Right.
And the third guy is one of the portal wide receivers, Cam Brown from UCLA. He's not practiced either. So we'll see what transpires with those 3 guys, Alan. But again, for the most part, seems like Purdue should be pretty grateful for where it's at right now from an injury standpoint.
All right, 3 weeks from today will be opening day in Ross-Ade Stadium, noon kick against Indiana State. 5 weeks away from Notre Dame, and I know that coaches, they're busy trying to figure out who the backup quarterback is. You've talked about that already, or at least on the site. Yeah. There's some battles to figure out what position battles kind of pique your interest. If you were allowed in there and we're going to be able to scrutinize every snap of practice, what are you watching for from the position battle standpoint?
Well, really, I mean, the competition at wide receiver, Alan, is I think it's pretty. I don't think that's a lot of lip service from the coaches. We talked to Corey Patterson on Friday. The very affable, very amiable receivers coach.
You can see why he's a recruiter, right? Yeah.
But I tend to think there's probably a pecking order of sorts just from them. We've been able to see a little bit 11 on 11, Alan. Pretty consistent group of three guys have been with the number one offense as far as receivers go. We've seen C.J. Smith in Georgia, Jamal Edgerrin, the Florida Atlantic transfer who missed last year, and then number 0, Jaden Dixon-Beal, who got here last year from a junior college. Of course, noteworthy, he's missed the last couple practices, but still, Dixon-Beal, Smith, Edgerrin, I think are probably would be your top three. In the competition, though, and then I think it's really fierce even behind those three guys, Alan. Andrew Sawinski. Don't sleep on number 26, sort of the plucky guy. Sort of to give you a dated reference to Rick Bruner.
Yeah, there you
Kind of
go.
wide receiver. You know, he's always going to show up, Alan. He's like Jackson Anthrop. You can count on him, Alan. You keep trying to recruit over him. You can't recruit over him. So this guy like Sawinski, Dron Tibbs, boy, we talked to Dron Tibbs Friday. What an impressive young man. Big wide receiver. I think he's really going to play a role as well. Leland Smith, a big junior college wide receiver. I think he's got a shot to help him too. So they've gotten a lot bigger. Alan and Corey said they wanted to get bigger at wide receiver, and they certainly did. And that's a position, boy. You remember back in January, the players hit the portal fast and hard at wide receiver. They lost 6 or 7 receivers. You know, yes, Abdul Rahman, you seen Deion Burks, you know, TJ Sheffield, Mershawn Rice, on and went. They really turned that position over. So I think the competition at that spot is going to be very, very intense, Alan. And that's, you know, obviously the key to the success on that offense this year, I think, is how will those receivers develop and produce.
Yeah, going to be a storyline that Hudson Card, by all accounts, is obviously the man, but also wants to his game to another level. He can't do that without a lot of productivity at receiver, but still the tight end room seems pretty good. No injuries there yet. So was Max Clare out for a day? I can't remember now after reading all your stuff. But
yeah, he was out.
Go ahead.
But you're right. There's the tight ends. He was out. Clare was out today. George Burns been out the last couple of days. But you know, if everybody's healthy, Alan, that tight end room is going to be very good. Justin Sins is a good tight ends coach. You know, Justin Sins has been around here a long time. He's a very good tight end himself. He's got one of the better rooms on the team, most people believe, Alan. Max Clare, I mean, we keep scooping hype on top of hype when we talk about Max, but I think it could end up being justified before it's all said and done. And George Byrne, too. My goodness, Alan, what an athlete. Long and lean, can run, a great hurdler in high school. Not the thickest guy, but he's gotten thicker, Alan. And even Drew Bibber, he's a 6'5" kid. They've got 3 really good tight ends. And boy, I think you watch a lot of football, and you probably would agree with this notion that I think the tight end can be a quarterback's best friend, Alan.
Yeah.
You remember Cliff Benson and all those guys, and Charles Davis, and of course, Dustin Keller, Tim Stratton. There have been some pretty good tight ends matriculated through West Lafayette the last 10, 20 years.
Yeah, and of course, Stratton, that new Hall of Fame pick. Both of us have enjoyed our time around Tim. That was a good thing for Tim. Go ahead.
How about that Cliff Benson reference, Alan?
Yeah, Cliff Benson was a really good tight end. Had a little bit of injury issues. Had his son who played at Northwestern in basketball. Purdue recruited him as well. Pretty good pedigree from the late days of him young, and of course recruited Tim, and then of course Joe Tiller's first recruiting class was Tim Stratton, and that group that was ranked last in recruiting, and
ended up getting, was in that class.
Yes, and a guy named Drew Brees ended up getting to the Rose Bowl. That not all bad from that standpoint. Speaking of being picked last, and we've talked about this the last couple of weeks, Purdue being at the bottom of the pecking order, at least from the experts like Tom Dienhart, though Tom did not pick them last. Do you see signs that? I mean, I know this. It's always. It can give you an edge if you're Purdue. Ryan Walters seems to be a quiet enough guy, though, that lives with an edge, I think. The Ryan Walters that I know a little bit about, but any sense of that? A lot of talk about that, or are they just going about their business?
Oh, it's real, Alan. It's real.
Yeah.
I think they're hacked off.
Yeah.
I think I think they're motivated. Ryan's even gotten Ryan's kind of clapping back a little bit, even in some of our media sessions with him. He'll retort back with
Mhm.
a point of his own. So I think he's plenty dialed in. I think he's plenty motivated. Um, how couldn't you be, Alan? You pick last,
Yeah,
18 at 18. I guess somebody's got to be picked last, right? Um, Illinois is dubious. There's 4 or 5 teams you probably could have slotted last, but so here's Purdue, and I think the big reason now is that schedule. It's that
yeah,
schedule. Look, compare their schedule to Indiana's schedule. My gosh, the schedule does Purdue no favors. You couple the schedule with a head coach who's still sort of finding his sea legs, coming off a 4-8 debut, who's got 37 new players. I mean, you could see why people picked him last, I guess. So here we are. This storyline, this chip on the shoulder storyline's been around as long as sports have been around. Coaches love it because it works. Us
yeah.
against the world, guys, they don't believe in us. They're disrespecting us. Boom, boom, here we go. So Purdue's going to have that as a carrot in front of them to motivate them, I guess, going forward here, right?
Yeah, and it is interesting. I think one thing too that's kind of interesting on the whole front is when you're picked 18th of 18 in the first
Yeah.
year of 18 team league,
Yeah.
it does seem like it's a lot, I guess, for you
Mhm.
know, but and it's guys that are picked in front of you that you beat last year, three of them, Indiana, Minnesota, Illinois, all picked in front of Purdue. Again, I think you would know more than I, but I think you couldn't have a less, and I think a lot of people, a lot of media folks would agree with this. Who the hell knows? I mean, that's what it gets down to. That doesn't mean that Purdue won't finish 18th, but it also means that we don't really have enough data. It's just not like it used to be where you could sit there and say starters returning, blah, 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 and just kind of look at it and plot it out and have it make a little bit more sense. I think it's really more jumbled than it's ever been.
Yeah, just so because the transfer portals just change these rosters and the turnover annually is so much that it's hard to get a real read on who has what. But Alan, they pay us to make predictions, right?
I know. And it's part of the
People
fun of it.
demand it. So here we are.
Well,
Here
and
we
I always get it. I always get a kick, and I understand where Ryan's coming from. Coach Ryan Walters, of course, is that you want to use his advantage, but you also want people. That's why they do predictions. Where our job is to tell the story of what we're seeing in Purdue sports, but that's good for business too. Not our job to promote their business, but it is. They want media attention. They want discussion. If we didn't talk about it, it wouldn't mean anything, right? I mean, that's kind of. And then maybe if Purdue makes a run and finishes in the top half of the league, we'll say, "Wow, isn't this amazing?" They jumped through some hoops to get in the top 10 of the league.
They say love me, hate me, don't ignore me, right? And
Yeah,
boy, fans are buying tickets, right? I think there's a good chance for 4 sellouts this year with Notre Dame, Nebraska, Oregon, and Penn State. I'm told the Northwestern game, that's Family Day, Allen, I believe.
yeah, big day.
Sales been real good there as well. And of course, and you got the opener, and everybody's always jacked about the opener, right? So yeah, I think they're going to have another nice run up of crowds here to support them this year. And you're right. We talked about going back 40 years ago to 1984. I had this story this year about that 1984 team that Leon Burtonette was on a hot seat, right? And Purdue was supposed to be miserable, and they ended up going 7-4 and beating Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Michigan, and going to the Peach Bowl. So we've seen Purdue sort of rise up before. In 1997, Allen, where was Purdue picked in going into the 1997 season?
Oh,
So on and on it goes. It's sort of fun. It's kind of always, I always like the underdog, Allen. My whole life I've always kind of liked that underdog, and Purdue's certainly an underdog this year, and the chance to prove everybody wrong, right?
yeah, that's going to be a fun thing to watch. And if you're a Purdue fan, which most of you are, if you're watching, listening to this, it is a storyline
I think too, Al.
yeah,
Think they did Jeff Brom's first year, 2017. They were supposed to be rotten. Remember?
yeah,
And they looked at the schedule. Where's Purdue going to win? Find me 6 wins on that schedule. Brom got him to a bowl game.
Yeah, I'm in a bowl game, went to Missouri and whipped up in a 35-3 win. And, that year, and I think that's the thing that's important, and we've seen it before, maybe a little bit more of a challenge this year, but we've seen it historically. The Jeff Brom's game against Louisville, which was a loss,
Close
but
game, right.
they played well, and they chased around and did a decent job containing Lamar Jackson. But it set the tone, for what that was. Now, again, we go back to Tiller's first game in '97. No, maybe not. But what set the tone that game, as we've talked about and written about many times, is the fact that they didn't panic. And then they came back the following week and beat Notre Dame. Maybe a little bit tougher with Indiana State is week one, because you're going to have that expectation of winning. But I think that's going to make what September 14th really interesting, because if Purdue can get out of the gate, it gives you a chance to, surprise some people. You're going to be an underdog against Notre Dame. I don't think there's much question about that, but it is a team that's not so, I don't think the Irish are so good. It's going to be so great this year that Purdue can't be in that football game.
Yeah. And you have 2 weeks to prepare, right?
Right. And that helps. I think it does. I think it's really as tough as Purdue's schedule is, the fact that you have a week you have to be careful, because there's been FCS teams that have won games, and certainly Indiana State would like to come in here and show well. But one would think Purdue will have a chance to work out some of the kinks, find out where it is as a football team, and go from there. Okay. One other question I wanted to ask is, before we bring this segment to a close, is that backup quarterback. What about that this week? Ryan Brown, Marcus, if you look at this situation where dang near every year, and I don't know, did we quote it that we have a year, and I should know this, but
2016 is the last time
where Blau went from start to finish. My point is, you go back, and there have not been many years, even last year, of course, Hudson Card missed the Northwestern game. We saw Meredith and Brown in that game. I liked some things I saw from Brown in that game, just his ability to run the ball, be decisive. Where are we with this? And we're probably going to be under the shroud of not really knowing until, if you're a Purdue fan, God forbid that Hudson Card goes down early. But that's still an extremely important part of where this is. Do you have any inkling or any thought about where the Boilermakers might be in that backup quarterback position?
Yeah, you're right. Ideally, maybe Purdue gets ahead 50-0 against Indiana State and can play the backup quarterbacks a little bit in that ball game.
Yeah, no doubt.
A lot of the practice over here, Alan. Ryan Brown's come out first with the second team guys. Marcos has had his moments too. I think when push comes to shove, Marcos is the guy. I know he's only a true freshman. I know he's not real fleet of foot. He weighs 244 pounds. He's a big boy. He can throw. He's got a lot of arm talent. I do think that they still would probably try to utilize Ryan Brown just because of that ability to run you talked about. We saw it in Evanston last November too. He's a tough kid. He's pretty big. I just don't think he's that polished of a thrower. So I think if push comes to shove, I think Marcos is the number 2 quarterback. But again, I think we could still see some Ryan Brown packages, Alan, to take advantage of his athletic ability. Who knows, Alan? Maybe even if Hudson Card's healthy, and now Hudson Card can run, maybe they have some Ryan Brown packages that they use on those instances as well. So why not try to utilize all the players on your roster if you can? If they got a skill set that can help you get a first down, Alan, or help you in the red zone or do whatever. So it's important to know who that backup quarterback is, especially if you're Purdue. And like I said, David Blau, the last quarterback to go as the starter from start to finish, and that was in Daryl Hazel's last year. Jeff Brom never made it through 1 year with the same starting quarterback.
Yeah, a big factor. I think Hudson Card's got to be on a pitch count, so to speak, and how many times he can run the football, though it's extremely important. And his best thing, one of his better things he does at quarterback. But you got to keep him healthy as much as possible. I like the idea of mixing it up. We'll see if Ryan Walters goes to that a little bit in his repertoire offensively for the Boilermakers. It will be an interesting thing to watch. All right, we'll let you get back to your your post-birthday celebration, but we appreciate all your information as always and your work. There'll be a lot more next week as Purdue continues through. Do you know the schedule next week?
We got 4 practices next week we can attend, and the only day that we can't go is Thursday. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday of next week, practice will be there'll be some media availability on those 4 days next week.
All right, we'll look forward to that as always. All right,
fan day on Sunday if people want.
That's right, and I think that's an important thing. Obviously, the Sunday the 11th fan day, a great chance for fans to get out there and shake some hands and get some autographs and meet this football team. Those kind of these will be in. The weather's going to be good in West Lafayette, from everything we understand. Not too warm. Be a perfect day for fan day as well. I'm glad you mentioned that because
6 to 7:30.
Yeah, so early evening and a chance to and then of course, well, it isn't quite time for classes to start at Purdue yet. They will be starting a week from Monday, but GR, which of course is where those freshmen, you and I never got that. It put a damper on my whole college career that I did not have all orientation, but those kids will be on campus I believe on Tuesday. So if you're around West Lafayette, it will start to look like Purdue is starting to ramp up from a student perspective, and that just means we're going to be playing football before long.
Yeah, I can hear they must drive this Boilermakers special around because I seem like I hear its horn go off intermittently throughout the day or sometimes. It's kind of fun, Alan, to hear that horn and it's always kind of fun, not to digress, but the memories of being a kid. And when you leave, if there's a football game going on, you can hear the crowd from a couple.
Nothing like it.
Those times. I remember too when the blimp would come, what a big deal that was.
Oh yeah.
It's a blimp.
All the things that are passe today were a big deal back in the day.
Oh, the blimp.
Living where you live and close to the Ross-Ade Stadium and in hills and dales and all that is a great place to be if you're a Purdue football fan to kind of get ready to go. And it'll be all hopping, but certainly August 31st, noon kick against Indiana State. All right, so we'll make a little transition to Brian Neubert, talk some basketball, Olympic basketball as well. I don't know. Hey, by the way, if you had a chance to watch much at all, and if you do, what have you watched?
I really haven't watched much, Alan. I walk in the room, sometimes like table tennis will be on, or I guess the thing we watch most here is volleyball because of Annie Drews.
Yeah. Annie Drews has a chance on Sunday, I believe it is, right? Well, it'll be the gold medal game against Italy, last day of the Olympics, and of course she could win for her second gold medal.
Cool.
And she's a big part of that team, to say the least.
She is.
And they had a huge win over Brazil. They'll take on the Italians as well, and we wish Annie well too. So we watched a little bit of the track and field, which I love that, but I don't get a chance.
I watched that. I figured you'd be watching the breakdancing.
Yeah, I'm really upset that they didn't let me in. Amazing that
2028.
I know I can work for it. I did watch. I've got a good friend that went and watched the dressage. He was there in Versailles, and that's quite the. And Snoop Dogg has made a big difference on all this. He has been and we have another friend that of course Cole Hacker, who was an Oregon runner that won the 800 meters in unbelievable fashion from Indianapolis. Good friend and Purdue roommate of my wife's that was there. Got to touch his gold medal in Paris. So we're living vicariously through some of that stuff. But the Olympics are always interesting and always an interesting time. Always storylines, just like there is in Purdue football. So all right, we're gonna make our break to Brian Neubert. Thomas, thanks so much. Have a great rest of the day, and we'll be back next week again. And this isn't the end of our show, but a reminder too, we'll be talking more Purdue football with Tom after another week of practice. Mm-hmm. Take care, and join us here for Brian Neubert here in a second. Brian Neubert joins us, and a reminder too that you can subscribe to GoldandBlack.com. Become a member by going to our website. You can also, obviously, we've got some information at the bottom of this on YouTube of how you can also get to one of the many things that we do at GoldandBlack.com and watch and listen to Brian and Tom, etc. throughout the course of the week. As Brian has now changed his name to Gold Medalist. So this is airing on Saturday morning. I thought the USA basketball team survived a huge scare against Serbia. We're going to talk Purdue basketball later, but I did want to get your thoughts on that. They will be playing the French. Many of you will have listened to this maybe after that game, but it's at 3:30 on Saturday afternoon Eastern time is when it will be on. But what was your thought though watching the Serbian battle and the fact that they were down 17 and they were in trouble even with 5 minutes to go? To impressive comeback by USA to get it done.
Yeah, well, the first thing is that the world is really good at basketball.
Yeah.
That's been apparent for a generation now.
Yes.
The three-pointer obviously is such a big deal in basketball that's globally more true than it is domestically, even, and it's pretty important in the United States. But the three-pointer is a great equalizer in all of basketball, all across the world, and that certainly played into it. The Serbians are always tough. They're always tough. They've got the best player in the world, and I think that's what people need to start resigning themselves to about international level basketball, is that you look at the best players in the world right now, they're all international guys. Giannis, Jokic, Luka Doncic, Victor Wembanyama is next up, and none of them are American. And that's just the globalization of the game, and that is the NBA's impact on the world. All of these guys have come along because 1992 woke the world up to basketball, basically. And ever since then, the world has been putting out great players, great teams, and following the NBA's lead in terms of the way the game is played. You look at the way Serbia can shoot. You look at the way a lot of these international teams can shoot. A lot of these guys grew up watching Steph Curry. So there was kind of a synergy there between seeing what Kevin Durant and Steph Curry were able to do against them and the undercurrent of what players like that probably meant to some of the feeder systems and the way kids in Europe and other countries grew up looking at basketball and playing basketball and things like that. And it's kind of a backhanded compliment. The United States created the international parity that you're seeing in this event. Nevertheless, the United States is going to be a favorite against France, even though France has the home court advantage. And I would be surprised if the U.S. doesn't come back with another gold medal. But I don't think it's guaranteed here that the U.S. is just entitled to the gold medal every 4 years, like people, probably kind of half expect at this point.
Yeah, I got the privilege of watching the last. I got an alert with about 8 minutes left in the game, tuned it in on Peacock. I had to explain to my daughter, who is a sports fan at 27 years old, that she goes, well, wait, did they ever have the Olympics when they didn't have the pros? And yes, they did. And of course, you're right. I agree with you about 92. I remember watching those games in the United States winning by 50 and 60 and 70. It seemed like every game, of course, with Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson on down the line.
Compare the teams that team was beating to the teams that this team has to beat. The only NBA player of any prominence I remember back in 92 was Tony Kukoc.
Correct.
I'm sure there were more, but you're not running into Luka Doncic and Nikola Jokic, as I wear my Denver Nuggets t-shirt here.
Yeah.
You're not running into Giannis Antetokounmpo. You're not running into Victor Wembanyama in 92. Now that's what you're going through. And as I said before, the United States isn't entitled, to winning this thing like they were back in the 90s and things like that. And that's the direct result of that 1992 Dream Team.
Well, and also, as a matter of history, the United States has, in 2004, didn't win, right? Yeah. And I know in Athens, and of course, that brought a major soul searching, and of course, the Redeem Team in 2008 that got the job done. But yeah, I'm with you. It's a very different game, and I think that the effect of Michael Jordan and others in 92, but it's right. Tony Kukoc was such a big deal when he came to the Bulls because he was, and he was a very good pro, to say the least. But it is he was one of a very few. That'd be a good.
Yeah, I can't remember if Arvydas Sabonis played in those Olympics. I can't remember if Sarunas Marciulionis played in those Olympics. But
I think
the one guy I remember
been,
was Tony Kukoc. Drazen Petrovic, I don't remember if he was there or not.
Yeah. But the world has changed in terms of that. So when you look at the United States still, and I did think it yesterday, or excuse me, on Thursday, the fact that they were able to gather it together. Still a lot of pressure on those guys to bring it home because they are expected to win. And when you have LeBron and Steph and Durant, among others, this is a team that still, I think there is some pressure on those guys to get the job done. I don't know how much they feel of it. Durant obviously was terrific down the stretch in that game. But how do you view that with what yes, the USA still is the flagship bearer in the world of basketball, but there's a lot of parity.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what becomes of the U.S. after this LeBron, Steph, KD class cycles out, because this is going to be probably those three guys' last Olympics.
One would think, yeah.
Unless they're going to put them in jars of formaldehyde and sit them at the end of the bench in 2028, given how old and how injury-riddled all three of them probably will be at this point. But bet against LeBron at your own peril. The guy is a one of one all-time in terms of physiology, basketball savvy, things like that. But they're going to need some young guys to really take the reins here. Jason Tatum, Tyrese Halliburton. Yeah. In 2028, Jaylen Brown's probably in that conversation. But you need some big guys. You need some shooting. The United States does not have the same level of shooter that I think the world often has. Steph will be gone. Kevin Durant will be gone. You need some of those guys. Anthony Edwards will be in that camp in 2028. But no, I thought yesterday or whatever day it was, Thursday was a big moment for Joel Embiid, obviously, who picked the United States over Cameroon in terms of which country he wanted to represent.
And France, too. They weren't too happy about that either. So, go ahead.
Well, France is doing just fine. France couldn't even use him. They've got Rudy Gobert and Victor Wembanyama. I don't know if you could play all three of those guys anyway. But I think that it was a big moment for Embiid. I wish he'd rebound.
Man, the last 5 minutes they couldn't get a ball, couldn't get a loose ball.
This isn't a Philadelphia 76ers podcast, obviously, but I think if this serves as the moment where Joel Embiid becomes a winning player and not just a star, not just a scorer, I think that would be the best thing that could ever happen to the Philadelphia 76ers, because I think you saw him not get some loose ball. I mean, he was carrying them offensively, so that's part of it. But at the same time, you'd like to see him block out a little bit. You'd like to see him rebound a little bit better in crunch time, things like that. And, there's fairly or unfairly, when you're an elite player, when you're the best of the best, your team's success or lack thereof reflects on you. And, the 76ers haven't really won anything with, some pretty good teams. And now that they've got Paul George, they've got Tyrese Maxey, who's going to be a star. If Embiid can take that step where he becomes that guy who makes winning plays and not just scores 30 points a game, I think that would be a really big deal. But I think that the United States just needs to do little things against France here. They're going to have a lot going against them, but I think that they can play Rudy Gobert off the floor. I think they can be physical with Wembanyama, who's not ready for this in terms of being a player who can just carry a national team. He will be in 4 years. He'll be the best player in the world in 4 years. He may be the best player in the world in 2 years. But right now, the best player in the world is Nikola Jokic, and the United States got through him by the skin of their teeth, in large part because of LeBron guarding him at the end of the game. And just playing a great floor game and just doing a little bit of everything. The fourth triple-double in Olympic history, stuff like that. Steph Curry obviously gets 36 points or whatever it was. And again, you don't have these guys after this year. So this experience, you hope, as a U.S. partisan, is really teaching some of these guys who'll be back in 2028 how to win, but also going into their NBA seasons next year, and probably nobody more than Joel Embiid. Now, will Embiid be back in 2028? I don't know. Big guys, he's had a lot of injuries in his career. Big guys sometimes aren't built to last like that. And we will see. But it's the Tatums and the Halliburtons and I assume Donovan Mitchell will be in that mix in 4 years. That have to pick up this mantle here, kind of coming into this upcoming NBA season, and then obviously into 2028.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit of Purdue here. Braden Smith has and Fletcher Lawyer and others, but those two especially have a little bit of that mantle and that ability to carry this program forward into this next season. There are expectations now with Purdue, and there always has been, but this is still expected to be a competitive team. A lot of people think it can be a team that can win the Big Ten or the Big 18, but talk about just their role and what you see for them, not only from what they have to produce on the court, but leadership, running the show. These are two guys that it's a pretty good place to start if you're Purdue.
Yeah, I think you're very comfortable with the ball in both of those guys' hands. I think Braden Smith is the best point guard in the country. Whether or not he feels the loss of Zach Edey in terms of I mean, he will obviously, but I don't think that makes him any less of a player. I still think he's a great player. I think he and Edey, it wasn't just Zach Edey, it wasn't just Braden Smith. It was the combination thereof last year that really made Purdue great, because they both unlocked something in the other. And whether or not you can find that sort of relationship basketball wise with somebody else with Braden Smith, we will see. That could be Trey Kaufman-Renn. That could be Miles Colvin. It could be Fletcher Lawyer too, for all we know. But I think it's important for Braden Smith to get somebody who's a consistent weapon around him. I don't really view Fletcher Lawyer as that sort of guy, because I think he's not really like a wing finisher or like a guy who really gets into actions with the point guard, so to speak. I think he's going to be more of a guy who's got the ball in his hands more than he has before. I think he's a guy, obviously, you run a lot of offense for. I think he's going to have a great year. I think that people underestimate how good he has been in his first 2 years at Purdue. I was his only All Big Ten vote, and I would make that vote 100 times out of 100 if I had to do it all over again. I think he had a really good year last year. People look at some of the low productivity games. When somebody's not forcing shots and they're not, turning the ball over, and they're not hurting you on low volume, that's not the worst thing in the world. He shot 47% from three in Big Ten play, something like that. People look at him as not scoring in the national title game very much. There was one team in college basketball who could do that to Purdue, where they could have the sort of horses who could really affect Purdue's guards, and a big guy who they could just match up one-on-one on Zach Edey. That was a complete outlier game. There was one team in college basketball who could do that, and it just happened to be UConn, who was the best team in college basketball. So using that as a reflection of Lawyer's season to come is not prudent, for lack of a better term.
But lacks perspective, certainly.
I think this should be the best backcourt Purdue has had in quite a while. PJ Thompson, Dakota Mathias was pretty good. PJ Thompson, Carson Edwards, Dakota Mathias was pretty damn good. Carson Edwards, Ryan Klein was pretty good. But I think this, the burden of responsibility shifts to Purdue's guards even more than it was last year. That being said, if you have a fantasy college basketball team, there might be no safer pick than Trey Kaufman-Renn, because you look at this dude's per minute productivity in his career, you look at his trajectory in terms of getting better from year 1 to year 2 to year 3. You slide him into usage now, he is going to put up numbers, man. I'm telling you. So this isn't just like a backcourt dominated team. Purdue's going to have weapons. Miles Coleman's going to take a jump from year 1 to year 2. Camden Heidi's going to take a jump from year 1 to year 2. They've just got a lot going for them again. I'd be surprised if Purdue was not in the hunt at the very end for another Big Ten title. I would not be surprised one bit if Purdue's not a top 3, top 4 type of seed. I think this is a season. I'll say this: they won't. But assuming everything stays as it is, going from this season to next season, this is a year where you have a really good year, if not a great year, and then next year is the year where that's your next shot to win a final or go to a Final Four. But you need to get Miles Colvin taking a next step. You need to get Camden Heide taking a next step. You need to get these freshmen experience. And I don't think Purdue, I said this last year too, and I was wrong, but I don't think Purdue will go unbeaten in non-conference play this year. I don't think this season will go as clean as the last two did, so to speak, but I think Purdue's going to be pretty damn good.
All right, we are going to do something we don't do often. We're going to take a little pause here because I don't have enough battery on my computer. So stay with us. We're going to be back.
See what I'm dealing with here, people.
I know it is unbelievable. So hang loose. You're going to see our editing wisdom magic work here. But we'll be right back. Right, next thing you'll hear is Brian answering another question. Magically, we're back. So Brian Neubert throws up his hands as he should when I can't even run a 20 minute podcast on Zoomcast on my without having to change my battery. All right, Brian, I do want one other question I wanted to get to is just kind of your overall analysis. I mean, it's obviously we've talked about every guy you've mentioned in the last question. None of them were the true freshmen coming in to join this team. Just put that little bit of that, and you've written about that extensively. You've watched them practice. You've watched them get here, certainly in their AAU days, et cetera. But what give us some perspective on what is realistic from this group and what roles they may or may not play in this season.
Yeah, first things first. You don't need these guys to be stars right away. You don't need them to be what Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer were last year.
Yeah.
You need them to be more like Miles Colvin was this past season, where he gives you good minutes when you need him. And that wasn't the case all season long for Miles Colvin, but it was at the end. And you just need them to be their best when it matters. And I think that the guy you really need the most from, or the guys you really need the most from right now, are Jakari Harris and CJ Cox in your backcourt. You have very little depth among true guards. I think CJ Cox is probably your backup, quote unquote, point guard / primary ball handler. I think Jakari Harris is a guy who can play 3 positions, guard 3 positions, more importantly. And I think seeing what he can do defensively might be one of those situations where he plays whatever position you need him to guard. And I think both of those guys are defenders. They're mature, they're competitive, and when you get those guys and they can make shots, that's ideal. So I think those 2 guys step right into big roles right away. Daniel Jacobson, we'll see. His body has a long way to go, but Purdue would love to have some size to put next to Trey Kaufman-Renn at times, moving Kaufman-Renn back to the 4 sometimes. Defensively, I don't think they want Kaufman-Renn guarding a 7-footer for 40 minutes. Things like that. Not that I think that that's what they're always going to do anyway. They do double the post systematically anyway, so it's really not that big a deal. But I think from a wear and tear perspective, he's so important offensively. I think they want to protect him a little bit. Will Berg is in that mix too, so assuming Daniel Jacobson is their only option in terms of a true center to play next to Trey Kaufman-Renn is not accurate. Will Berg is very much in there. Just kind of remains to be seen what can be expected of him. Obviously, he's got some experience. He's certainly got the body. But I think that Daniel Jacobson obviously garnered a lot of attention with his USA basketball experience this year. Can be a great player at Purdue one day. Whether that's right away, I don't know. But I think you probably get him on the floor right away somehow to get him ready for next year, if nothing else, and to just get a rim protecting element you might not otherwise have. Will Berg is big. I don't know if he's necessarily a shot blocker, Trey Kaufman-Moran, not really a shot blocker. Caleb First, not really a shot blocker. They're more perimeter-oriented defenders, which is important too. But I think having some height and length around the basket could really help them. And you don't get much taller, much longer than Daniel Jacobson. So I think there's a role for him. And then Raleigh Burgess and Jack Benner, we'll see where they fit in. Purdue's got people at their positions. Jack Benner missed some time due to illness when he first got here. Raleigh Burgess, lost some time in high school to a broken leg. That how much that set him back, I don't know. But it couldn't have helped, So it's not like Mason Gillis' situation. Mason Gillis wasn't healthy when he got to Purdue. Raleigh Burgess is healthy, I think. And but time's on your side with those guys. So they'll certainly have the opportunity to carve out roles for themselves in practice. But I think the other three guys, obviously, step foot, right, set foot. Step foot or set foot? I've always said set foot, but I hear people say step foot.
I think it's set foot, but I think
let's go with set foot, okay?
All right.
So the other three guys all set foot right into openings, into vacancies, where there are minutes there to be claimed, not only through productivity in practice, but in some sense by default, because you don't have backup guards really. Unless you want to manufacture Miles Colvin and Camden Heide into guards, which it's probably not really what they naturally are. And then obviously the size situation is more so a want than probably a need. But Daniel Jacobson obviously fits into that equation as well. So Jakari Harris, CJ Cox, Daniel Jacobson, I think all have golden opportunities. Jakari Harris and CJ Cox virtually guaranteed opportunities. They are in Purdue's 8-man rotation from day one. Now, Matt Painter probably wouldn't say that with a recorder in his face, but I can say that because it's true, and there's no sense in dancing around the reality of that. And I don't think it's all that hot a take to even say that, because just if you look at the roster, there's not a lot of guards after Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer. So that's what to expect from the freshmen.
All right. Well said, and it's going to be really going to be a fun year to watch them, because just to see how Purdue develops and what the landscape looks like, and how Purdue bounces back or continues to move its program forward after getting to the national championship game last year.
It's what's kind of fun about college basketball is when stuff is new, stuff is interesting.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily saying last year wasn't interesting, but November was like, we've seen all these guys before. You knew what to expect. The question was whether or not Purdue was going to deliver on the expectations. And as soon as they won in Honolulu, it was pretty evident. There are two times in my frame of reference covering Purdue where I exited an arena saying that team's going to the Final Four. The second one was in Honolulu after they beat Marquette in the title game of the Maui Invitational. The first time was after they won at Ohio State in 2009, before Hummel hurt his knee at Minnesota.
Right.
They had just won at Michigan State. They had just won at Ohio State. Those were two top 10 teams. And those were the two times where I thought Purdue was going to the Final Four. That's irrelevant to our discussion here. What I'm saying is that when things are new, things are really interesting. And there's going to be enough about this Purdue team to virtually guarantee they're going to be really good, but there's going to be enough new to make them really interesting too.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun thing to watch, and yes, this is a team and a program that has the talent and everything else, all the right pieces to be extremely competitive over not only this year but down the road. All right, Brian. Well, thank you for your time, because you're contractually obligated. I don't know if you and I don't have a contract, but you show up for work and you get the job done, and it's appreciated. So well, very much.
You caught me in my good 20 minutes outside my fortress of solitude. So good timing.
You were very lucid today, I would say. All right, I want to thank the Union Club Hotel and Vicky Wicks and Company. They've got a spa there, Brian, by the way. I know you're trying to get them to build some other hotels in other cities, but you could use a good massage.
Can you get me an appointment?
I know. Yeah, I could. I
get my nails
know some
done.
people that know some people. Yeah, nails, back massage, all that.
I've got
kind
some
of stuff.
pores that need exfoliating. Do they do that?
Yeah, they would probably get that done. It's on the second floor of the Union Club Hotel, right above the 811 Bistro and the Boiler Up Bar. Great spot to go. I got a sneak preview of it a couple of weeks ago and didn't use it, but did see it. It's pretty first class operation.
I'll have
So,
to hit their
as
location
is.
in Birmingham when I go down to watch Purdue play Auburn.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's one down there, right? There's
I
a
think
Union
so.
Club Hotel in Birmingham,
And
right?
I'm guessing that Eugene and Seattle also are working on that because you'll be making a trek out there this year as well. I think if we understand the schedule correctly, you'll be out there.
Yeah, well, I
Maybe
think I'm going to fly into Portland and stay in Portland. I'll just drive to both games. It's 2 hours north to Seattle and it's 2 hours south to Eugene. So
yeah, you can spend some time. You can go visit wine country on the Portland coast. It's great in
militia
January.
country.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's an interesting place. All right, have a great weekend, everybody. Rest of your weekend. We thank you for watching and listening. And a reminder, you can become a member of GoldandBlack.com. You can also like us on YouTube and all the things that you can leave a positive review for Brian too. He likes those as well. And we hope that you'll consider doing that. We'll see you next week. We'll probably
if you're in a militia and I insulted you, please don't.
No.
Please don't leave a comment.
We don't want that.
I also don't want militias mad at me.
No, that's not a good.
That's bad business in my experience.
That is correct. You want to stay in the south part of Michigan when it comes to that too. So I hear you. You know where to go. You know where to stay. All right, August 17th, we'll be back for that Saturday simulcast. We'll be talking, obviously, inching our way closer to Purdue's season opener against Indiana State in Ross-Ade Stadium. So have a great week, everybody, and thanks for watching and listening our Saturday simulcast on GoldandBlack.com.